Everyone's favorite Fox and Friends are back for the Code Box rerun. What's that? You prefer the jailed foxes? Well, isn't that a shame? I want them released too. You'll have to settle for a new cleaning and clearing student instead. Uniform Akane is now released. Tough luck, Uniform Toki. Don't be greedy. Toki just got her second ult. A better one than Uniform at that. Not like they're going to make her the first student to get a third ult after all. Back to Akane. It's been suspicious support after suspicious support, and it looked like Akane was gonna be another addition to the gang-threatening pyro dryness. But finally, it seems like we get a moment's reprieve. I'll go ahead and say that she's not generally a recommended pull. You can stick around to find out why. So what does Akane do? First off, she is a special red attacker. Her EX takes 4 cost and applies a damage effectiveness debuff to red armor targets. We've had a few instances of this kind of debuff recently, like with Armed Ryo's sub-skill and Armed Himari's EX skill. In the opening I mentioned that Akane looked dangerous before we got the numbers, and this was the main reason why. If this red effectiveness debuff was stronger, she might have been a dangerous support character. But at 16.1%, it's more of a garnish than a main dish. For comparison, Sumsun Hoshino's effectiveness buff is 99%. In fairness, she shouldn't exist though. The secondary effect of Akane's EX skill is a self buff of Basics Proficiency. If you've forgotten because there's only one existing character who has it, it's the same as Magical Suzumi's. This is where she's quite potent though. Suzumi's only gives about 25%, whereas Akane's is a whopping 83.9%. Combined with her red effectiveness debuff and critical damage subskill, she's achieving quite the respectable total buffing. This self buff is why she classifies as an attacker, but then where are the damage ratios that will be using this juice? As implied by the Basics Proficiency, Akane's normal skill is her nuke. It's a 14-20% ratio that accompanies her EX skill and is effectively her EX skill shifted down a skill slot. Think basically Kuroko's EX and basic skill combo. When taken as a direct comparison to something like Ryo's 2600% ratio, it doesn't sound so great, but I imagine it's to take into account the amount of self-buffing that's coming from her EX skill. Similar to how Kuroko's normally pitiful 900% ratio is beefed up by her bonkers 134% critical damage buff on her EX skill. There's another curious element to her basic skill, and that's the cooldown. In normal circumstances, without extreme cost support from a battle gimmick, it'd be hard to rotate more than 2 EX skills for a special student in the first place. But then they've gone out of their way to give it a hard cooldown. This could be a limiter for battles with cost regen via mechanics like Geburah's Heater. Or it could be hinting at some soon-to-come boon to the special side like a Ryo to clone special students. That one's just pure speculation though. Moving on to the passive skill, Akane keeps things explosive with critical damage. Pretty standard but useful. Pump her up with Eligma and you'll get the enhanced version with attack damage that gives her a 4 set of attack, critical damage, color effectiveness, and basics proficiency all on her own. She's a pretty complete package. Finally, her sub-skill. This one's also a critical damage buff, but this one's for the whole team. Nothing particularly of note. And what do we expect she'll be used for? In terms of existing content, the main thing that comes to mind is Geburah. It's a little bit doubtful she'll unseat Satsuki as the damage dealer of choice there, especially with the built-in speed limit on her normal skill. There are also the rest of the red single target bosses, but like with how Satsuki hasn't dominated outside of Geburah, it's not expected that Akane will either. Could be a decent sub-team I guess though. The best guess for most of us on the JP side is that she'll be used for whatever the next red boss is with all these recent red students outside of the existing molds. We've gotten a few clues from the kits of recent students, guaranteeing that we'll probably need red armor and debuff removers at the very least. Akane seems positioned to be one of the primary damage dealers for this unless this is misdirection. She would likely be intended to pair with Rena, who can give her nice special buffs on the side of fulfilling whatever debuff gimmick they've got in store. If Armed Amy is our other hint for damage dealing, it's going to specifically want damage that falls under the Basics Proficiency umbrella. This means normal attacks, basic skills, and sub-skills. We don't have any students doing most of their damage out of the sub-skill currently. My impression is that this is a way to make Satsuki stay in her lane as an EX attacker. Everyone's favorite actively sabotaged Hina will probably also be forced to do what she does instead, cope with her normal attacks. Don't sleep on them though, she's plenty strong even with just her autos. She'll have her chance to break the game again with her third ult whenever that is. Other than that, she could also be decent for PvP considering she's low cost and does a lot of buffing for herself. But on to the important question, should you pull her? It's generally not recommended. Attackers neither fest nor limited are a luxury reserved for whales and waifu pulling. Since she's running with Vanilla Seiya and Uniform Asuna, definitely prioritize those two first if you don't have them. If you're in jeopardy of missing the 5.25 quarterly limiteds, you're in a tough position. She could be important for whatever's coming next, but as an attacker you'd also have to raise her. So most smaller fish sensei would borrow her. I'll personally feel vindicated pulling Rena if she ends up the next Satsuki. That's it for this time, thanks for watching.